Welcome. So today was one heck of a day. I was able to get a few loads of chipped up yard mulch from the landfill, and I spread that out over the land. Works as a nice layer to insulate the ground. Then there was an important meeting to go to today, and so it's concerning toxicity in the groundwater in the area, in the community, just down below and a little bit closer to the Army base from where I live. And so there were a lot of people that were really concerned about the health of their drinking water due to the toxic chemicals the Army has been using to extinguish fire and the questionable actions of throwing a bunch of, this is a localized training center. So other, people come to this spot to train, right? And so the continuing, well, I don't know if they're still doing this. I hope not, but it is what it is. They take diesel and gasolines and JP8s and they pour it on the ground to catch it on fire, to spray chemicals on it that leach into the groundwater and become toxic. So there's several layers of pardon my language, but several layers of what the fuck that come to mind, right? And the people that were representing the Army and the testing facilities and all of this, they're basically just good people, just trying to do their job within the limitations that have been given to them. Because somebody somewhere has dictated a certain level of engagement or what they can authorize or what they are capable of doing job. And the people that are representing this entity right now from the government, they're not directly responsible for what happened. They probably had no individual participation in that. But people are mad. People are really mad because, you're talking about your lifelong investments of a home, of a property, and devaluing the property because you don't have any water available. And luckily, they had an opportunity to ask questions, and so I used my opportunity to also educate them on a solution that has been implemented in other places in the world and has been successful. And why it isn't more popular seems criminal, but I think it's only I think it's ignorance. I don't think it's maliciousness, because I think when people know better, they do better. And they all seemed genuinely shocked at the embarrassingly simple solution it is. But I didn't know this simple solution until I spent a lot of time with the beaver, and I spent a lot of time learning from models from all over the world how water management, which is our most precious commodity. Our bodies are over 70% water, right? And the planet is over 70% water. And so water is a really important element for us to manage appropriately. And dumping chemicals into it isn't the best way to do that. So there are solutions to this problem, because we're also facing other problems with water here. Not direct, not caused by the Army or any government agency, luckily. No, but we do have the resources available in government and in the military to be able to remedy this globally. We have a fantastic workforce of servicemen and women who want to serve their community. And they do it in a myriad of ways. Sometimes in ways that cause PTSD because we're doing it somewhere we shouldn't be. because somebody somewhere said so, and they had money into it or resources invested into it. But when we're working in our local communities and volunteering and accomplishing, helping to accomplish what one person or one small group of people can't do alone, we can be confident in handing off to our future generations. When we communicate globally to learn the best ways to accomplish life, and we act locally, amazing things can happen. I've been dedicating basically the last decade of my life, most of it, to shifting landscape so that it can hold on to water, and shaping it in a way that it improves access, but also productivity and harvesting of the elements. So creating dew point zones and microclimates, and using stacked rocks as condensation generators, pulling moisture out of the air from the desert air. From the desert air, it contains humidity. So you create a dew point zone by managing the air currents, and it creates dew in the mornings. So when the warm air comes back across it, dew settles, and it can water plants and trees. And then once plants and trees start growing and it shades the ground, well, the desert can turn back into an oasis. But a flood came through like 13,000 years ago, and it washed everything away. There's just like books about it, right? The Great Flood. And we're living in a product of erosion. There's only sagebrush and bunch grasses here. So it's desertifying, and wells are drying up. People are having to punch deeper and deeper wells to be able to grab, water that can be consumed for themselves and for the animals, for their crops and their gardens. So when they have to dig deeper and deal with erosion, because when we do get rain, we get a lot of it. I mean, it really comes down, and it hits the landscape, and it carries the silt down the hills and into the river and off to the ocean. And it overflows the boundaries of the river. And sometimes it floods, the streets and stuff that, people that live down in those areas. And, that's probably pretty easily solved if we can do mild shifting of the landscape. It's called permaculture. It's a way of managing the elements to manage the landscape, the earth, and promote product, feeding a lot of people. It's also been decimating the landscape. You don't have the wildlife in agriculture, but in permaculture you have squirrels, and but there's such abundance that if they eat some nuts or berries or whatever, it's really not that big of a deal. But although, like in that forest, you have a natural order, because where you have lots of squirrels, you're going to have bobcats and coyotes. And basically, I live in the middle of that already, so I know that it can exist. I've been building this desert wasteland into oasis for some time, and I can go outside and I can watch rabbits running around, and the ravens come over the top, and you can hear their wings when it's really quiet. You can hear really strong wings. And then you can watch the hawk just soar above it all. Slight manipulations of his wings. He just sits there effortlessly, soaring above all of the chaos that I'm creating down here at the apocalyptic ashram. You gotta break apart what doesn't work and then put it back together the way you want it, because we will continue to experience problems until we change where we put our energy. And getting back to the training center, okay, so right now, people are focused on the problem. And so everybody's wanting to get their well tested. They want to know how bad their well is. But if we start right now digging holes on the hillsides to hold the winter water where it falls, what that does is it creates, imagine the mountain like a sponge, right? And if you pour water on a dry sponge, it's just gonna run right off. But if that mountain has been moist, the sponge, if it's been moist, and you pour water on it, it absorbs it quickly. And then down at the bottom of that sponge or the mountain, a spring is going to pop out because it's going to start leaking because it's being held in a big sponge, but gravity is always pulling it down. And so when it's always pulling it down, if it's just got dirt and bedrock and stuff like that, it's going to come to a point that it has to come out somewhere, like from the earth, and that's a spring. And so when these springs start flowing, they trickle all that water out of the mountain. But if every time it rains, the water gets recharged up on top of the mountain and around the sides of the mountain in different ways. I mean, because all landscapes are unique. And so there's no one cookie cutter plan for, well, China does kind of a cookie cutter plan, but I hate the way that looks. It's cool, but the terraces, I think, should be more diverse, more of a natural flow rather than looking like a factory. It's like they're still using big machines to do all the harvesting. And so, each row is like 16 feet wide, and then, for the terraces. And I think you just match the flow. And that's what I've done here at Hawks Haven. It's a very unique landscape. It's multiple use. Anyway, so three people in particular from the Yakima Training Center and the local county, Yakima County, were some of the primary people I'd want to say something about it here. So Lieutenant Colonel Luke Whitmer, he is the training center commander, and nice guy. I was able to talk with him a little bit before the meeting, and he seems genuinely concerned about seeking a solution, because although he didn't do the problem, he did not create the problem. He is a problem solver and wants to do that. I believe that. What I learned in the military was that sometimes you have to creatively name things for them to be funded. And I worked, the last part of my service was at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. It's kind of an elite assignment because they've got a lot of money to play with. Dignitaries come in on private jets, and there's a lot of bases in that valley too. We've got Peterson Air Force Base, we got Fort Carson, you've got Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Base, you got the Air Force Academy. It's a heavy military presence town, and a lot of money. A lot of money gets spent there. And anyway, where was I? A lot of money to spend creatively naming. So if we had volunteers that were given 3-day passes, or we could do it as a training opportunity for basically a water revolution, because water being the most precious resource that we have, or one of them. I mean, they're all important. I mean, that's how balance is created. But water is the one that we're failing with. Fire, we've got that mastered. The Pacific Northwest and the Midwest and everybody. Australia, everybody's burning up. So we have no problem with fire. We're good there. Let's focus on the water, though. And so when we manage the water, we do it in a way that it holds to the land. The beaver shows us this. And so using the principles of the beaver, but paying attention to modern infrastructure, that's how we strategically manage where we want the water. And then we can also plant trees so that they're fed off of those watering sources. This has a lot of different benefits. So we can also incorporate heavy equipment training, and we can incorporate all sorts of different opportunities that, when creatively named, can solve the real world problems right here. Because when I was active duty, we engaged more somewhere else than we did right here. And what I've recognized and what I was seeing when I was active duty is that we have problems right here that need to be resolved. And if we have a force of really good quality people, I mean, hardly any of them are on any kind of drugs. They're fit, they're healthy, they're willing to risk their lives to make this world a better place. I mean, I joined because that's what I felt was a way to give back to my community for those that have given before. A lot of people have paid the ultimate sacrifice to maintain freedom. Tyranny, oppression, crimes against humanity should all be addressed as swiftly as possible, efficiently, with accountability and transparency to make sure that only the best things are being supported. I have to ask everyone involved in this, what side of history do you want to be on? Do you want to be on the side of history that allowed toxicity to poison our environment? Or do you want to be on the side of history to swallow our pride, our American exceptionalism, and recognize that it's not necessarily someone somewhere else that needs to tell us what to do, but if someone somewhere else has a good idea, we should seek to find out how it's working for them. Because if somebody else is thriving where we're struggling, it's okay to ask for help. We as the United States military, Team America, we're quick to think that we're the ones that need to help everybody else. But India, for example, they are mastering the water revolution. They have villages where, with picks and shovels and buckets that they put on top of their heads and they carried them by hand, they reshaped valleys to hold on to water. And now, instead of only getting one crop per year and then having to commute on dangerous trains, have you ever seen those? Oh my God, they have like people just standing on top of the train. I mean, that would be some sort of health and safety violation here in America for sure. People would be freaking out if people were packed on top of the train, and sometimes they fall off, no problem. There's a lot of people there, But that's not right. I mean, I value your life as much as I value mine. I want you to be safe and healthy and happy and productive, and not having to risk your life to travel to a mega city to be able to work for slave labor so everybody can have a brand new t-shirt, like this. I made this, me and my friend. Yeah. Heavily meditated. I did not ask for anybody and get your Zen at Hawks Haven. Get your Zen at Hawks Haven. I didn't ask for, some kid in a factory across the world to build this for me. Me and my friend did. I had a t-shirt, and then I said, "Hey, I got this idea. Can you help me put this on there?" She said, "Yep. I got one of them cricket cutters." So anyway, India has been doing a fantastic job. What they've done is they've shaped the landscape. Now they're holding on to water, and now that their mountains are holding on to water, they're able to get 2 to 3 crops off of their land. And so by doing that, they no longer have to risk the dangerous trains. They don't have to sleep underneath the sewing machine in a sweatshop. So I can have an $8 shirt instead of a well, if I buy it local, it's you can really $12 to $15 to $20 locally to do a good job and pay somebody for their time. Is kind of a fair price, but we get cheap prices because of the cheap labor. Anyway, this is happening on many levels everywhere, but India is a great example. So anyway, yeah, this is real. I mean, I can't cut any of it. I guess if I modify this later on, I can, but this live without having somebody to talk to, it's easy to jump off topic. Anyway, Lieutenant Colonel Luke Whitmer. I would love to have a conversation with you and talk about some of the solutions that we can use. The resources that you have would enable an army of we, to tackle this project. And I'm very confident that 5 to 10 years, we can improve the quality and the quantity of water available in this local aquifer. And by doing this, we are creating a global model, because we're here in the desert and we have a toxicity issue. And by raising the amount of water in the aquifer exponentially, I mean, we're talking every acre gets, I think it's 21,752 gallons per 8 inches of rainfall. So you could look that up on like a surface area calculator, on the internet if you want to. But figure 1 acre, 8 inches of water is 21,752. So every 10 acres is 217,000, and every 100 acres is just over 2 million. So, and out here in this community, we've got thousands of acres. I mean, like not just hundreds. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of acres. Like probably like hundreds of thousands of acres. And so when this is implemented on a large scale, a little bit in a lot of areas, you're not completely moving the landscape, but you're making little shifts to the landscape that work in many ways. When we do that, we're increasing the water absorption capacity of the land. We're creating the ability for wildlife to thrive. We're creating resources. We're creating a healthy tomorrow. And we're by having such an abundant water source stored subsurface, the aquifer, the toxins that have made it into that aquifer won't even be at a distinctable level, or detectable level. It's like if you have 100 people in a room, and one of them is really just having a bad day, it makes a bigger effect than when you have 1,000,000 people having a really good time, and you still got that one guy over there just thinking his life sucks. I mean, you're like, hey man, come on. I mean, see all these happy people? What's so wrong with you? Let's pick each other up. But in this deal, anyway, it's time. It's time that we use our resources to fix our problems. So the other person I'd like to speak about for a minute is Amanda Mckinney. She is the county commissioner for this area. And, she was present, kind of just as a representative of the people. I feel that she does want to solve these problems. She's limited in what she can do because it's really a federal issue. It's kind of a gray area. I mean, it's hard for this to be cut out black and white. I mean, this is black and white, but but this issue that we're facing isn't. And I think I'm confident that she wants to see these solutions implemented as well. And I think that the county also has a lot of great resources. We've got fantastic people working in jobs of public service. They're being paid well. They get paid vacations, and they've got a good healthcare system, and we're taking care of them. I think that we should, because they're doing a job that I don't want to do. I mean, I've got other things I want to do. I've served our country, and now it's okay that somebody else is filling these positions. The county employees that operate heavy equipment, I'm willing to offer a free class on permaculture design, keyway, swales, terracing, the benefits of it. Because they're doing a great job at keeping the weeds away from roadways, and I mean, they have the skills. They're just not yet aware of how to modify a landscape so that it can hold on to water. Everything that we do has been to expedite the water. That's like I was talking to a guy from the conservation district, and he admitted, he's like, yeah, he says, well, that's kind of been the focus, straightening out rivers to align with highways or roadways, so that way it minimizes the bridges and distance. And it's like, right, okay, so that is for making a straight roadway, that's conserving on fuel for big trucks that are traveling over it, and stuff like that, right? But it's not conserving the water. It's instead of meandering across a valley and touching a lot of surface area, it's now running right down through a valley aligned with the highway. So if the water from the hills expedites down through the eroded ravines into river bottoms and into the ocean, we're causing a drought. And it's the they've noticed these problems starting in the early 1900s. I mean, we just through this valley, there used to be creeks that flowed that aren't flowing anymore. And they only have water in them on a heavy rain or a snow melt off that, luckily the last few years the snow has melted off in a perfect way. It warms up enough to where it starts melting, and then it refreezes, and so then it soaks in. And for like the last 4 years, the features that I've incorporated into this landscape model, they haven't become active. It's only when we get surges of snow melt off or rain that these features become active. And then once they're activated, what's this thing telling me? Oh, my connection is unstable, so I don't know. We'll try it. I'm gonna keep on keeping on. I'll shut it down because I don't want to waste my time. But anyway, by having the rivers aligned with modern infrastructure, it's fine. That can still happen. We don't have to destroy cities. We don't have to do that. But we do need to work in the mountains to make sure that the water that falls there stays there the best way possible. I'm just gonna keep talking about these solutions, and then we can cut this into little video clips if we need to or want to. The other benefit of this is when we keep the water in the mountains and incorporate more access points in more unique ways. This is all done as we travel through the mountain, and we modify these landscapes. And the best time to do it is after a fire, because there's a lot of wood that needs to be used up. There's a lot of money available for the efforts because of the fire, right? There should be. If there isn't, why not? I mean, this can be incorporated into our forests and promote dispersed camping, because we have a homeless problem. But a lot of those homeless people would, if the landscapes were capable of having gardens like the forest should be. I mean, it shouldn't just be the pine cones available if you want to find something to chew on. I mean, like when I grew up, there was berries and stuff everywhere. I mean, it was pretty awesome. I mean, I don't know how many, I would have to say hundreds of pounds of blackberries that I've eaten, and salmon berries and all sorts of just great stuff to grow up on. I mean, me and my cousin, we'd take off for a long time. I mean, we just start walking in any direction out in the woods and see what we could find. And that was a cool childhood. We solved the problems by fixing the landscape. The dispersed camping, that solves the homeless problem. And it can also solve a fire problem, because instead of having a lot of fuel on the forest floor, when people are camping, you go for walks. And when you go for walks, if you've been doing this for a while, you have a pack frame with you, and you collect sticks. And then you collect sticks and chunks of wood and everything else on your pack frame. So you don't need a gym membership because you're hauling wood around while you're hiking. And you can gather up the fuels that in the summertime would be burning up and catching everything on fire. You're burning these fuels up in small fires every night, and you're dispersed through the land, because who wants to camp right next to somebody else? I cannot stand going to a campground if I'm going to go camping. I want to be out with my hammock and my dog. And when I want nature, I want it to be just me and nature. But, the other thing is, people, that go camping have a little folding saw usually, or some sort of machete or a hatchet or something like that. And so even the branches that are on the bottom of the trees, like anything you can reach that looks like it's dry enough, it gets cut off. And when you cut it off and you've reached up, 5 or 6 feet at least, you've created a check. That one's kind of funny, isn't it? You would think that, that's $9.60 a paycheck every Friday. No. Try every 2 weeks. You get paid every 2 weeks, $9.60, $11.60, something, slave wages, and you get to sleep in a tent and eat slop. No, not always slop. Sometimes, people, they have some good food too. A lot of times they're eating junk though. Hot dogs, lips and assholes, right? Potato chips. I used to have a poor diet too, but the other things that also incorporates too is sanitation. Sometimes in these big cities, they've got people pooping on sidewalks. Well, that's because they can't dig a hole in it. I mean, you need a jackhammer to penetrate the concrete in one spot, or the asphalt in another spot, or the tile in this spot, or the hardwood flooring in this spot. And, so I mean, I think that if people had a place that they could dig a hole, like a cat, they would poop in the hole like a cat. And then they'd cover it. And then the microbes in the soil, they just kind of turn it back into dirt. I mean, because I've tested that theory. And I've worked at a sanitation plant too. Not for a long time. I didn't like the smell, but I know how it works, That benefits the forest, because just like a bear, when you poop in the woods, when you poop in the woods, that's where your fertilizer goes, right? And so the fertilizer produces healthy soil, and healthy soil produces a diversity of plants that can grow in that soil. Right now, our forests have been managed towards straight grain timber for some time. I know she's not responsible for that part of the county, but so anyway, I think I've gotten far enough away from that topic, but I would bet that using county employees to implement everything that we can touch in this county in little ways will have tremendous results. Next person I'd like to speak about is Mark Mettler. Mark is what is he? He's an environmental engineer, and he is part of the Restoration Advisory Board. And so on the Restoration Advisory Board, which I will be volunteering on, they get paid a lot, but I'm the one bringing a solution, and they volunteer, because that's the way it works. But hey, you know what? I'm here to serve. That's what my ministry is about, free will ministry. I'm here to serve. And I've had the blessings to be able to study these global models, and I've had the health. I've been very lucky in that pathway to implement it. And so I've been creating this model that people have not really seen. I mean, this is a unique way, because I'm taking what they've done in India in a grid type pattern, just to the next level. There were ideas given to these people, and they said, okay, this is what works. Okay, let's do this. And so they've got, like a grid of these implementations that happen. Whereas mine is a little more of a free flow design. It's making it a multiple use landscape instead of just a singular use landscape of they're still trying to basically do agriculture, whereas I'm promoting more of like a food forest, where the forest provides resources and it also provides food. And we can do that when we increase the water on the land. It works in mysterious ways, and I could talk on it for hours. But so Mark, I think is really feeling overwhelmed in this. There was one gentleman who was kind of upset that Mark hasn't answered his voicemail messages. But if you're wanting a person to achieve something that doesn't really have much guidance in, returning a bunch, he may not have a secretary, and he may not have somebody who can expedite the process of handling disgruntled people, right? Because that's tough on a person. It is. I have to laugh though. He was asked a question that deserved an answer, and it deserved a legitimate assumption of responsibility, and he kind of acted like Hillary Clinton under testimony. I don't recall. But you could tell he recalled. But he said, I do not recall. I can't say yes or no. He was bound by somebody somewhere else limiting his authority to do what is right. And I think the lady next to him, I didn't get her name. I think she was more of just like a handler, saying, no, don't say that. No. Like a shocker. Don't do that. I think that eventually, one day, all of us, we come to a point that if what we're doing isn't what we know to be the best thing, we need to say no. That's what I did. I had 9 years in the service, but when I recognized that what I was doing wasn't the right thing, I had to say no. I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I think that with creatively naming processes that we can all work together, though, and I think we can make a seamless transition from the Army's current 30-year plan to a 5 to 10-year plan that can recharge our landscapes and expand into our communities in a healthy, happy, productive way. Because when we're working together and we're creating an abundance, everyone thrives. So, anyway, yeah, Mark, I look forward to working with you and helping to resolve these problems, because I am very confident that these problems are easily solved. And when we work together, we can present to the community some transformative ideas. I've been studying natural medicine. I'm a naturopath healer. I live as a monk out here. I teach yoga and meditation. I teach ways of detoxifying the body. And I'm nearly 50 and I'm in the best shape of my life. I have clear thoughts. I'm very rarely am I ever upset or angry or it's I mean, why? Why allow your environment to have that level of control of you, right? And I wanted to say you guys all held it together really well tonight. Um, I realized there was a lot of people mad. They were mad. They're upset. They're fearful, and they're seeing you as the face of what is the responsibility of their source of fear and anger. And you guys did good at keeping it together, realizing that it's not personal. It's just what they're feeling, and they don't know how to express it always in a way that is that is calm and rational and fair. So anyway, I think that was about all I wanted to talk about. God, 46 minutes. I can talk. I get people in front of me though, and that's when we can really go off on situations. You know what? I'm here. I'm going to keep talking. So back to the dispersed camping in the forest. Okay, I know a lot of people who love camping. I've got a gosh, I think I've got a YouTube video on it. Look down in the click on the videos, scroll down. I think I've got a couple videos on that. People love camping. I know people who call it overlanding. I know people who call it van life. I know people who call themselves a rubber tramp. You know, they're on wheels. I've lived in a van before for a few months, and it was awesome. I loved it. It was simple. It was free. I mean, you know, I technically it would look like I'm homeless, right? I mean, because I'm living in a van. But I was going up and down the coast and to a powwow over Joseph, Oregon, and then a family reunion. And I didn't have to pay for any motels or anything because all my favorite things were in the van. And yeah, I mean, this is the longest I've ever lived in one place. I love nomadic life. I love traveling and seeing other cultures and experiencing new things. And I think a lot of people are stuck in one spot for too long, and we're not a tree. You know, you got legs. You know, you got legs to go somewhere. You got a car. You got a bus. You got a train. You know, whatever. Traveling is something that most people don't get to do because they're too busy working a job to pay for a house, to buy the expensive food and the life insurance and all this stuff. But living simpler is really a way to take your freedom back. You know, I mean, like I used to spend, well, it cost me thousands of dollars a month to live. And now, really, I mean, it only, as long as I don't have to pay property taxes, it only costs me a couple $100s to live. And so everything else that I produce, I can use that time and energy to solve the problems, to see what I can do to make the world a better place. Because I mean, I wouldn't want a lifetime worth of my work to just be sitting in a bank account somewhere. You know, I mean, that's like a lot of human energy. I mean, I spent a lot of time doing things to create things, you know, I mean, but what did I create? I created towards sustainability, and I created towards independence, and I don't need a check from anybody to exist. I grow my own food. I built my own house. And the connection is unstable. That's what I get for living out in the desert. I mean, so we'll see how much of this actually comes through. I don't even know. Now it's buzzing at me. I don't know. Anyway, living in a van, living in a camp trailer, living in a motorhome, living in, have you seen some of those? They're hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they're pretty cool. I mean, you got a little slide out drawer that your car fits in, and you've got all the creature comforts you could want. Even a school bus, an old school bus, schoolies. I met some pretty cool folks down in Oregon. They, I gotta say it, they had a mother plucking chicken coop on top. And it was awesome, I mean, and when they pulled up to their dispersed camping spot out in the woods, they have spots that they go to different times of the year. And, because you go somewhere and you hang out with your buddies here, and then you go somewhere else and you hang out with your buddies there. And then it's like they call it rainbow gatherings or family gatherings. And it's your friends. That's who family is. Mother plucking chicken coop on top. But in areas that they go to, they do these principles. They dig holes and they put their poop, and you don't put that right by your garden, but I do it like a smiley face. I dig a series of holes that resemble a smiley face, right? And little eyes up here on a hillside, right? And so if I'm camping somewhere for like 6 or 7 days, well, and if I got to go use the bathroom 6 or 7 times, you fill up your little holes. And obviously you're not filling it up with all of the poo, but you're gonna do your duty, and then you put some dirt on it, and then or some wood chips, and that way it's not gross. And then what I do is I take all the rocks from the area and I put them on top of the poop hole, the little poop holes, right? And so you put rocks on top of the holes where you've done your dookie, and then up here, and you put rocks for the eyes. And then on the edges, you dig a little trench where it comes down and it feeds right into all those holes, right? And off the eyes, you can put little eyebrows that come up. So all the rain that comes down into that area runs into the eyes and into the poo and feeds the microorganisms that are turning your poo and your compostable waste into good soil, right? And then if in your poo you have seeds from blackberries or cherries or apples or whatever, right? Now you've got a water harvesting feature, and you've got the chance of a cherry tree growing out of your eye or blackberries growing around the bottom. And by the time the waste turns into soil, the microorganisms have eaten up any bad things, any parasites that might be in the stool of a person eating meat, right? Or like the dairy stuff. Sugars. You get a lot of parasites in a body that kind of concentrate in the intestinal tract. So, but by the time these plants grow up to be mature, you're talking a year or 2 or 7 or 10, and then the berries that they're producing are actually being fed off the healthy soil that you've produced before. And so then if you are also taking your kitchen scraps and you take them with you in a little paper bag or a big leaf, you can take a big leaf of all your kitchen scraps, and you can put that on top of your poo. And so you're creating a biodiversity. And what are some of the other benefits of dispersed camping? You're energy independent, because usually you have a solar panel, or sometimes people have like propane generators, and there's a way to make methane generators, again, using poo. and food scraps or grass clippings and stuff like that. There's systems that you can just put all these things in it, and then the sun, that a big ball of fire that comes out every day and runs across the sky, well, that warms it up and creates methane. Well, then methane is a combustible gas, and so the methane can be used in generators to run and to create power. When we have a healthy, hydrated landscape, we have creeks that flow everywhere. And with these creeks that flow everywhere, that's a running water source. And if we were wanting to pull water out of those creeks, we can use what's called a ram pump. And it's a pump that is very easy and inexpensive to build. And it has the capacity of running without electricity. And it's just running on water hammer, hydrological shock in a system with a bladder and check valves, and it can drive water all the way uphill. Like if you have a little camp or something up there, you can have your running water without running any electricity, but yet not camping right next to the water source, because if you camp right next to the water source, it's that's where the mosquitoes hang out. See, and that's the other thing is, okay, Amanda, this would be a wonderful thing, is if we had an incentive to plant lavender and mint rather than call the guy from the county to come and spray poisons for the mosquitoes in these areas with surface water, because the mosquitoes don't like mint and lavender. So if we plant mint and lavender where people are living and where they're frequenting, well, that gets rid of the mosquito problem. That also gets rid of a malaria problem. It gets rid of a problem with having to buy a bunch of chemical like DEET or OFF or whatever that people are spraying on their skins, because that's not good for anybody. It really isn't. If the mosquitoes don't want you after you spray that on you, you shouldn't want that on you. For reals. For reals. The mosquitoes don't want it, you don't want it. When diversity is happening in the food forest, okay, let me start. I was talking to a guy from Central Washington University at an Arbor Day event. And I said, if you used more of like a companion planting, something that would draw in the predators to the pests, you wouldn't have to be chemically treating the apples, to keep the pests from consuming them. And he's like, well, that's not the way we do it. I said, why? I know, but you're spraying chemicals that the people wearing or spraying the chemicals have to wear chemical like warfare suits to not die. So this is an option that we could consider. And he says, well, we've been considering, wrapping each of the apples in a plastic bag or in a paper bag. And I'm like, no, there's plastic bags. They're putting plastic bags over the apples, and you couldn't see inside of them, and so it was blocking all the light, and the apples had no color. And so then they had to start taking the bags off the apples a couple of weeks before it actually harvested. So now I'm wondering, is this even like a naturally occurring fruit anymore? I mean, it's not getting as many of the sun's rays, but I don't know. We're just messing with it. And why are we creating so much plastic waste and so much labor to wrap each apple on a tree? When we plant companion planting, we draw in the predators to the pest, and through that diversity, we don't have the disease problems, because the pests are being called to agriculture because it's an unhealthy environment. They're like the cleanup crew, I'm like a mouse or an ant. If we leave food out, they come into our life and they're like, hey, what's going on? I'm just going to eat this stuff over here that you left on the floor, right? And most people are like, what the hell are you doing? They trap them and they kill them, and they spray poisons on them. They spray poison right where they prepare their food. Right? That's maybe not the best way for us to conduct life if we're concerned about toxins entering our body. And so, that's the thing too. Okay, so these toxins about the Army, if they're listed in a range of about 70 parts per trillion is the EPA standard before they're going like, hey, something really needs to be done about this. I mean, this is bad, and it's a problem, and people should not be consuming it, and animals should not be consuming it, and it needs attention. Well, some of them are upwards of 1,200 parts per million. But we have to consider and place our focus, because when we solve some of these major problems, we reduce the amount of toxicity in our body to where it won't be producing cancer, right? Because if you're getting toxins in many places, you can become toxic. And a quick assessment is if you're carrying a lot of extra body weight, you're carrying toxins. You're carrying things that are in excess of what you need right now to be healthy. They're stored nutrients wrapped in like a little fat sack, just a little fat globule, like a Ziploc bag that your blood does for you. It carries. Your liver and kidneys are burdened by the frequency of meals. Liver and kidneys are burdened by the frequency of meals. So anyway, I think that's about all I gotta say about that. So yeah, we talked about dispersed camping, the landscapes benefit, permaculture as a solution for fire, a great reduction because the way we design access points in and features that are installed, plus having a green ground cover, much less likely to catch fire. The campers picking up the loose debris from the forest floor, the abundance of food is created through a diverse landscape, a food forest that promotes wildlife. And with wildlife, it promotes all sorts of resources. We're intended to share the planet with the animals. We're caretakers here. We've established hunting seasons that go out and decimate populations of animals. I mean, I'm not saying that no hunting is that should be done, but there's a lot of shifting that could happen to where it'll promote a more abundance for everyone, really. In all ways, abundance of shelter, food, and clean water should be our birthright.